35 kids in the school years 7 to 11 had coronavirus in the week up to the 3rd of September. That's your news on Talk Radio TV. More in half an hour.
This is Talk Radio.
Keeping you up to date across the UK, online, on DAB+, and on the Talk Radio app.
Rob Rinder on Talk Radio.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's 4:32, and listen, tomorrow marks 20 years, 2 decades since the 9/11 terror attacks, the worst terror attack to ever hit the West, resulting in the deaths of 2,977 souls. Joining me to remember this day is White House correspondent for Real Political News, John Christopher Buer. Prof. JC, firstly, thank you for being here. And, I always think it's important to say I'm so sorry. I should also say, Prof. JC, John Christopher Buer, that, looking around the office, I've got a brilliant team of young producers, many of whom in their early 20s have no memory of that event at all, yet it's been seminal in my life and no doubt yours, to say the very least, and certainly on the nation and the psyche of the United States. As you approach tomorrow, the 20-year anniversary of 9/11, how do you reflect upon it, Prof. JC?
Well, you made a very good point, and the greatest generation, as we call it, the World War II folks, all remember where they were the day that they heard that FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, has died.
Wow.
I remember I was in my sophomore year of high school when the priest came in and told us to take out our rosaries that the President Kennedy has been killed. And no one of any generation after that, as you say, will ever forget where they were the day and they saw those Twin Towers come down. Now, I'm from New York, and I remember as a student watching the Twin Towers go up before it was even called the World Trade Center.
Wow.
And I was flying back from London, Rob, the night before. As I flew over Lower Manhattan, it was green and very eerie looking, and it's shrouded in a green haze. And I said to my wife, "Look at this; it's very foreboding. And look at the World Trade Center. It's frightening looking." Well, the next day when I got up and I went to my physical therapist, and I heard the news from a woman in the lobby listening to the radio, my wife said to me, "Remember what you were thinking last night. She says, you have incredible premonitions, and this is what happened. That you thought something awful would happen, you felt it in your soul, and there it was the next day."
Wow. I have to say I didn't know that about that, Prof. JC. It's difficult to answer this question, I suppose. I mean, we know that the impact of Pearl Harbor really was the dotted line, to say the very least, that led to the US entering the Second World War. We don't have a whole podcast, hours to talk about it, but insofar as we can, in a nutshell, both kind of politically and maybe bearing on what you said spiritually, what did that attack do to the United States, its politics, and its kind of approach to the world moving forward after?
Well, we realized together that we were vulnerable. When you think of where they attacked the heart of our financial world, which is the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
They did attack the Pentagon, where our military is, and they tried to attack they tried to attack the seat of power of government, the White House and or the Capitol. And those brave souls that did not let that happen took the plane away from the saboteurs, and it crash landed and killed everyone in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And that's where the president will be going tomorrow as well.
As I'm watching this, Professor John Christopher Buer, I have to say it gives me and everybody goosebumps. And exactly as you articulate, everybody knew precisely where they are. They'll think back and know precisely where they were when this moment happened. It almost feels surreal. Um, what do you think? This is a difficult question, perhaps, of being, the lessons that a series of American governments have taken, so American presidents have had after 9/11. What do you think the downside has been, to say the very least, in terms of foreign policy as a result of this?
Well, the downside is that Joe Biden didn't want to make it 5 presidents who had involved themselves in Afghanistan as a result of 9/11. Now, the fact is that Osama bin Laden was responsible for it. We did capture him. We did kill him. And the fact is that this continues to go on. And the real question, to answer your question, Rob, is, are we any safer today than we were 20 years ago?
That's the question.
And I think the answer is probably not.
Now, I mentioned earlier about the age of my team. I suspect a number of your students at university that you teach may not have even been born. How are young people educated about 9/11 in the States? I mean, they can go, of course, to the extraordinary memorial, which is a really amazingly curated museum. But when you teach it or talk about it to younger people, what's their response?
Well, their response is similar to Pearl Harbor, as Franklin Roosevelt said, a date which will live in infamy. They've heard that, but they know it through their parents. They know it through their uncles who never returned home from work. I'm starting to get a little
It's okay.
teared up here. I know colleagues of my wife who's an attorney and worked down there, whose friend and partner's little daughter was basically turned into air, and they didn't come home. And she was a young intern at a law firm, and she's gone into the miasma of horror. And I think that's what people know about their family, their friends, their dads, their grandfathers who worked down there. And I know a lot of little kids who used to use, because I lived in Manhattan, who used to use the Twin Towers as a guide. Mom would say, look at the Twin Towers and remember, we're not far from there. I used the Empire State Building as a landmark. And it's no longer a landmark. It's no longer there. They put something else up, but it's not quite the same in terms of the emotion.
As we reflect, John Christopher Buer, on this anniversary, one of the things that many of us remember was in the immediate aftermath, there was more than a cross-party consensus. You saw senators, congressmen and women across the political aisle of every background, African American, Native American, standing alongside one another, shoulder to shoulder, singing and sharing the horror of a nation, galvanized as one collective country. It was a moment of profound unity, to say the very least. Since that date, as we look back on it now and as we approach this anniversary tomorrow, your nation has never been more, it seems to us anyway, politically divided. Do you think as we approach tomorrow, that might be perhaps a moment to reflect back on the possibility that your country could be united again?
Well, we all hope and pray so. Although they're individuals, I mean, when you see the demise of Rudolph Giuliani, who was considered America's mayor that day, as he stood alongside Hillary Clinton, who was the senator of the state of New York, and Governor Pataki, I believe, who was a Republican, and I believe, and he was the governor of the state of New York, and we all were together. We sang "God Bless America" at all our sporting events, and we still do. We are doing that again. And in France, they said we are all Americans today. Giuliani has fallen through his own sake, and he is not considered America's mayor. And Donald Trump, on this very solemn day, is doing the color for a boxing match down in Florida. So the country is in many, many, many pieces. We must come together. And if we stop and rest and relax and listen to people like you, who are always extremely thoughtful in how you present a topic, maybe we can learn something and realize that we are all Americans today. We are all world lovers of the world today. And we all must, however, in the meantime, defeat the evil there is. And we must realize that there is still evil. And although we are protected better, Great Britain and the US, there are still people who want to do us in.
Well, that's certainly true. You know, there were two wars after 9/11, and in hindsight, there was what I think political commentators and various political people in your country and mine call the good war and the bad war. That's Afghanistan and Iraq, and they call the Iraqi one the bad one and the Afghanistani one the good one. In other words, the response of the Americans was to go into Afghanistan, root out the Taliban, because they were giving succor and sanctuary to Al-Qaeda, and it was a staging post for this attack. Thinking back now with the benefit of hindsight, and it's always 2020 vision, do you think the response, the American and NATO's response to 9/11 was the right one?
Yes, but we gave up on it. We should be still involved. We've got Russia and Putin beating down the door. We've got the Pakistanis letting go their prisoners and now they're in power with Al Qaeda and ISIS. And now we've got a caliphate that Putin is only too pleased to see disrupting not only his enemies, let's say. I mean, America is certainly not his friend, and anything that can happen to the UK and to the United States that is detrimental, that is negative, Putin is enjoying it. And remember, he's got a lot at stake here. The Iranians have a lot at stake. The Syrians have a lot at stake. And, you know, Kim Jong-un is loving any kind of destruction. And I'm sure the Chinese are pleased because they can then get involved with Pakistan. And there's so many minerals in Afghanistan, just ripe for the choosing.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly seems to be the case. And you think about how shocking it is and how mercenary the Chinese government are, Professor John Christopher Beer, when, the Chinese are killing Muslims in their own country, the Uyghur Muslims. And yet the Taliban, it seems at this stage, gives you a sense of that government, insofar as you can call them that and not a criminal fascist gang, are prepared to do business with them. Doesn't that kind of articulate most perfectly what sort of people they are?
Indeed. And unfortunately, because of the withdrawal, we've given our enemies, and I'm saying this straightforward, an opportunity to do us more damage. And they're not taking any time to begin their efforts. And I can say that this is happening right now. And I know you know that in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, one of the things that's really interesting watching, as I do, American politics and political punditry on the right and the left, is that there are, few things that I think nowadays people who are that polarized can feel proud of. If you like, even the most basic patriotic symbols, the flag, and so on and so forth, aren't just up for discussions. But, if you want to wave a flag, the left will call you a fascist. And if you don't, the right will call you a woke leftist lunatic, and so on and so forth. All this mudslinging. I wonder whether or not, moving in tomorrow, is 9/11, that moment, that event, the symbols, the stories, is that something that perhaps galvanizes the country, that is a symbol of patriotism that right and left can agree on? Or are they squabbling over it just as they have been for the last, certainly, 10 to 15 years?
I guess you'd have to search your soul for that one. Not yours, Rob, but one's soul. And remember that a flag it's only flown when the heart and soul of the country is behind it, and the heart and soul of what is right for all humanity. Mm-hmm. That's why you raise your flag and your standard, your Union Jack, and that's why we raise the beautiful flag that Betsy Ross sewed and gave to us many years ago. I fly it, and I consider myself a patriot. I also consider myself a man who appreciates the international brotherhood and sisterhood of all humans.
Now, it's right to say that other nationalities died on that day. Many nationalities, people from all backgrounds died that day, rich, poor, from numerous countries. Last question, just very quickly, and I know you'll know how best to put it. How should we honor those who died on that tragic day?
We should honor them by telling their stories to our children, so they can tell them to their children's children. It's like, where were you on Pearl Harbor, or where were you on D-Day? This is a day that will live forever. And it comes through the storytelling from the heart and from the soul. And Rob, it's a pleasure being on your show. I know this may be your last one, but I will follow you anywhere. And you've got an enormous group of followers and friends in the United States of America who appreciate the kind of quality work that you do.
Well, it's a gift to hear from you. As we would say, I'm my Jewish background. Wish you and everybody a long life and a prosperous one, regardless of your background. What a delight it is to hear your thoughtful words. We will teach our children and our children's children. That, everybody, is Professor John Christopher Buer, Prof JC. Listen to him, follow him. Let's reflect on that as we go into the break. I'm Rob Rinder, and I'm going to be with you till 7 o'clock.
Online, on DAB, and on the Talk Radio app. Talk Radio.